I have a New Year's resolution for you. In 2025, don't get fired from your job. And I'm going to give you 5 ways that you can get fired from your job so that you can avoid them in 2025. I'm Karen Michael, and you're listening to The Job Judge. Welcome to The Job Judge, the podcast for anyone who works. I'm Karen Michael, your host of The Job Judge, where we navigate through all those legal landmines and workplace dysfunction that's probably happening in your organization. Now, a couple ground rules. I am a lawyer, but I don't give legal advice here on this podcast. It's just general guidance and advice. And you don't want to miss an episode of The Job Judge. So be sure to click like, subscribe, follow along so that you don't miss an episode. And you're definitely going to want to share this episode with your spouse, with your working children, with anyone you care about so that they don't lose their job. Now, 2024 was a tough job market. And I heard from person to person to person how hard it was to find a job. And unfortunately, because of the work I do, I know a whole lot of people that didn't get the memo about how to not get fired from their job in 2024. Now, just so you know how seriously I feel about this particular issue, in 2021, I published this book called Stay Hired: Thriving and Surviving in the 21st Century Workplace. Why did I write this book in 2021? Because I saw so many people that didn't know how to go to work. And whether you're entering the workplace as a new college grad or fresh out of high school, or whether you've been in the workplace multiple decades, it doesn't matter, because I'm seeing people lose their jobs way too frequently. This isn't about losing your job because you couldn't grasp the skills to do the job or something like that. That's something that maybe this just isn't a good fit for you in this role. And that happens, and that's okay. I'm talking about a job that you really like, that you kind of want to keep, that you do kind of need, but you lose that job because you do things that cause you to lose the job. Now, the first one, number one, I'm going to give 5 in this episode. And then at the end, I have a bonus round that I'm going to give you as to one more thing to not lose your job. Now, I will say the number one thing I see people doing that causes them to lose their job is saying something stupid at work or after hours that gets back to your employer, that is implicated into your workplace. Whether it's a racist remark like the N-word. I had a white woman go up to her black colleague who they seemed to get along just fine. And she said to her, let's call her Marion. Marion, this is what the white woman said to the black woman. Marion, you're my friend. I really like you. I would never call you a N-word. Why are you saying that at work? No. That's what gets you fired from the workplace, whether it's racial, whether it's sexual. This woman on one of my social media sites said and posted this just before Christmas. I'm wrecked, she said. My husband dropped a bomb on me. He was fired from his job saying something inappropriate to a coworker while off work grounds after a work Christmas party. Each of our families are slowly trickling in as we're hosting Christmas. We have a new house, kids, and relocated here for this job. Obviously, the priority is for my husband to find a new job, but I'm just so upset about what he did. I'm confused. This is pretty out of character for him. I'll believe that when I see it. But I'm disgusted. She said, obviously, I wasn't there when the event took place. I'm just shocked. My first instinct was just to focus on getting a new job so we don't lose everything we've worked for. But now I just can't stop thinking about how we ended up here. He knows he effed up, and I'm not here to defend him. I just can't believe this is happening. Not even sure what I'm asking here. Any advice is helpful. I just want to leave with my family and make him host his family and explain to them what he did, which I won't do, but it's tempting. I love our new home, the community we're in, and I love our family. We've been together a long time, but what the F? Thank you. If you read this far, I'm so ready for this year to be over. What I want to say to every person listening to this podcast: do not do this to your family. If you don't want it read on the headline of a paper, you don't want the headline to read, your name here did this, don't do it. And what people need to understand is that we've spent way too long trying to teach people how to not think things. You're going to think something. You're going to think something really stupid sometime. The key is to not act upon that thought. Have some common sense. Don't say something racist, sexist, anything that would border the line of sexual harassment. Don't say something that's ageist, that sparks something about somebody's disability. Don't use the R word, RETARD. Don't use that word in the workplace. Don't say something disparaging about someone's pregnancy or somebody's national origin. Think before you speak. Something disparaging about somebody's religion. Think before you speak. Do not say these things. When I read this email, this post that this mom, this woman, this wife made, it broke my heart, because so often when I'm doing an investigation and a person admits to or talks about the behavior, many times the person will say, well, what am I going to tell my spouse? What's going to happen to me? I know what's going to happen to the person. The person's going to lose their job. And that's the problem. The person is going to lose their job. You are going to lose your job. And nothing I'm talking about today is worth the end of your career. And it's completely avoidable. And yes, what you do after hours with other colleagues or among other colleagues, the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, refers to that as the extended workplace, meaning if what happens out there with coworkers impacts this job, there could be trouble. Your job could be implicated. So that's number one. Don't say something stupid at work that violates your code of conduct, that violates your harassment policy, that could get you fired. Number two, check your ethics. Don't do something unethical at work that includes any act of dishonesty in the workplace. And anyone listening to this is going to say, I would never do that, Karen. I'm not that kind of person. I'm such an ethical person. Everyone is ethical until they're not ethical anymore. And then they make a decision that, oh, well, they owe it to me, or it's owed to me, or whatever it is. This includes all these remote workers that view their remote day as a vacation day. You're hurting it for everybody else, by the way. This is why all these people are getting brought back into work, into the office, because so many of us, when we were working our remote day, viewed it as, I'm only going to dial it in as little as necessary. And in 2025, that's going to get you fired. If you put on your timesheet that you worked 8 hours, but you really watched Netflix for 6 hours, eventually that's going to catch up to you and you're going to get fired. Don't falsify any documents. Don't say that you went and did an inspection when you didn't actually go do an inspection. Don't say that you spent 30 minutes at lunch when you were really gone for an hour and 10 minutes. Don't falsify anything. There are a lot of unethical behaviors that I'm seeing in our workplaces, and companies just aren't going to put up with it. Do what you say what you mean, and always engage in ethical behaviors. Number three, your acts of violence, any outbursts, acts of violence, yelling, threats of violence have no place in our workplace, even if they are subtle threats. I'd like to see that person catch on fire, which I actually had recently in a case. Oh, if this person doesn't give me an increase, I'm going to slap her in the face. I'm just going to slap her in the face, which is another case I had. Lord, don't have me come up here and shoot up this place. Who are you talking about? Oh, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the people upstairs. Another case I had. All those people got fired from their jobs for making some stupid remark that may or may not be violent. And people always say, well, I would never engage in violence. You know, I'm just letting off steam or venting. No, they don't know that. All they know is that you made a threat and you're probably not going to be able to work there anymore. And why is there ever yelling at a workplace? I've never understood that. Why would anyone yell at another person? Inappropriately raising your voice to another person, any acts of anger like that have no place in our workplace. And there are too many examples of people in workplaces harming other coworkers when there was some kind of pre-notice about that behavior. I mean, Walmart in Chesapeake's getting sued for $50 million by two employees after one employee came in there and killed 6 of his coworkers. And their argument is everyone knew that this guy was a violent threat and nobody did anything about it. Employers are going to take action early, I think. They should. I'm telling you, if you're an employer, don't tolerate any acts of violence. And if you engage in an act of violence or threats or raising your voice or yelling at somebody, just assume you're probably not going to be able to work there anymore. Social media. People posting things after that CEO was murdered up in New York. Oh, it's so great that this guy was murdered. He deserved it. This vigilante justice that we somehow have gotten to, and praising people who engage in these terrible behaviors. If you're on social media celebrating murders, if you're on social media engaging in anything violent or any acts of violence, what you say on social media can get you fired from your job. And I know people think, well, I have a First Amendment right to my speech. Not really. First of all, if you work for the private sector, there is no First Amendment right in the private sector. The private sector employer is not the government. So just park that right there. Even if you work for the public sector, the question your employer is going to have to ask is, are you speaking on a matter of public concern? Are you speaking as a citizen or an employee of the organization? And if you're speaking as a citizen on a matter of public concern, that's kind of the definition of the First Amendment. But then there's this third part of the test. Do the interest of the employer, the agency, the public sector organization in running efficient operations outweigh your First Amendment right? And in almost every case, it turns out the employer wins. Do you want to put yourself in that situation where there's some question? I like to think of it as an umpire. If you have 2 strikes, I tell my daughter when she played softball, don't leave it in the hands of the umpire, because if the umpire calls it a strike, it's a strike. Your leadership in your organization, they get to be the umpire. Don't make the umpire call a close call. It's not worth the end of your career. And by the way, before posting, always ask yourself, am I sober? So many people post things on social media when they've had a little bit too much to drink or they've smoked something or whatever it is, and then they really don't even realize what they're saying on social media. And once it gets out there and it goes viral, there's not much an employer can do other than to say, this person doesn't work here anymore. Don't look at us. So don't let that social media post, it's not worth the end of the career. What's in it for me? Ask yourself. What's the worst that can happen if I post it? What's the worst that can happen if I don't post it? And when in doubt, just don't do it. Close your computer and go to bed. Just don't post it. And finally, I want to give a special shout out to sexual harassment in general. I am amazed at how much sexual harassment allegations and terminations increased in 2024 in my practice. Now, I go in and do investigations. I also do training, by the way. If you're an employer, please bring me in to do some prevention, because I promise prevention is so much better than reaction. Preventing people, helping them to understand what the rules are, because there are a lot of people that don't understand. And I'm not just seeing men sexually harassing women. I'm seeing men sexually harassing other men. I'm seeing women sexually harass men. I'm seeing it all because people don't understand that talking about your sex life at work, discussing sex at work, that's what she said jokes are completely inappropriate, whether they're texted to somebody, whether they're said to somebody. Someone posted on Reddit an example of a that's what she said. But basically, the guy says, they're talking about something at work. And the guy says, thanks, man. Woo, 8 gigabits. I wouldn't have expected a screen recording to be so large. Wow. And the guy says, yeah, but it was over an hour, LOL. And the employee says, well, in that case, I knew it was long, but I didn't think it was that long. You've been a busy guy. And then this person responded with a Michael Scott meme from The Office saying, that's what she said. And then he said, sorry, I couldn't resist that setup. Ha, 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 ha. And of course, the other guy responds, ha, 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 ha. People do that all the time. People don't say, oh, that's offensive. Don't do that to me. They're going to say, ha, ha. And then they're going to tuck it away for when they want to bring it up someday, because don't make a deposit in somebody's bank. One day they might make a withdrawal. People save the receipts. And when it's the right time, they'll bring out those receipts. And what I'm seeing are people, because we do have this 24/7 access to people, is this too familiarity with other people. We're getting too comfortable. And so we're oversharing with people. We're allowing people that we're attracted to or interested in or giving us attention to become our therapists, to just listen to all our problems. And if you're a boss, why are you texting your subordinate employee at 10 o'clock at night about your personal life, or on a Saturday afternoon saying what you doing? None of your business. None of your business. Stop texting people who are not your best friends at work. And even if they are your best friends, don't text something sexual. Stop communicating at all hours of the day and night. It's becoming too familiar. It's escalating. And I'm seeing way too much of that behavior. And whether you're DMing somebody on the social media sites, or you're texting them directly, or frankly, you're putting something really stupid in a Teams message, all that stuff lives forever. We collect all of that information. And even if you're Snapchatting somebody thinking it's going away, they're screenshotting it. They're keeping a copy of that. So if you're right now thinking, I'm really texting this person a lot, this seems to be escalating. We're texting day and night. Are we in a relationship? Is this consensual? No one says to you, stop doing this, I'm offended. They go along to get along. That's what people do. So don't let this overfamiliarity, and for goodness sakes, don't talk about porn and strip joints. Don't take anybody to a strip club. There are just basic decorum things that we have to do with our coworkers. And one of them is to leave them alone. And the other is to not take them or invite them to places that, if it was on the cover of the front page, would you be embarrassed? This is something you're trying to hide. And if you're doing anything in secret, frankly, you probably shouldn't be doing it. So those are the 5 things that can get you fired from your job: making an inappropriate remark at work, any unethical behavior, any acts of violence or threats of violence, social media, sexual harassment. Take all of that stuff off your to-do list in 2025. And now here's the bonus round. There are a lot of people that have some impulse control. And so what happens is they get mad at work and they say, I quit, and they leave. And then suddenly they get home and they go, I probably shouldn't have done that. And then they try to unquit. Too late. Your employer probably has already written you an email that says, I accept your resignation effective today. Until you're really ready to quit, put in your all, suck it up. You need this job. And unless you're being harassed or abused in some way, get to work, do your job. Quit with this quiet quitting and retiring in place and lazy girl jobs and all that stuff. Give 100% to your job when you're working. Even if you don't love your job, we all need to work in order to pay for our bills. And while you're doing that, feel free to be looking for another job. But until you're ready to not have a job, have some self-control and make sure that you keep your job. And I hope keeping your job in 2025, as long as you want to keep your job, you're in control of your own destiny. As long as you want to keep your job, do the things that you need to do to keep your job in 2025. And now it's time for Ask the Job Judge, where people ask me a question and I'll answer it, or I read something on social media, which is usually the case. And I love seeing what other people post and kind of responding to that. And this is on the Reddit site Jobs, which I think is a great subreddit. I really enjoy reading that. And this is the question, along the same lines as keeping your job in 2025. Here's the question: how do you survive while being unemployed? Besides getting unemployment benefits, what else do you do? I mean, like when you have no money and no savings. Well, the first goal is to not be unemployed in the first place. That's the first goal. The first goal is to keep your job as long as you want it. But some people do find themselves unemployed for a variety of reasons. In my next podcast, I'll talk about layoffs and things like that, because that unfortunately may be coming as well. And that's through no fault of your own, but we'll talk about how to prepare for that in the next podcast. But for this podcast, if you are currently unemployed, your goal is to find anything in order to keep your job. And it might not be a job that you want. It might be working as a server at a restaurant. It might be working at, the night shift at Amazon. I know somebody whose husband lost their job and he made actually pretty good money working the night shift at Amazon. Was that a job he really wanted? No, he kept it for 3 months. Thank goodness found a job, but he was able to feed his family. And it was a temporary opportunity for him for sure. But there are jobs available, especially hourly jobs in retail stores and in restaurants and possibly in warehouses or customer service. And there are organizations like that pretty much on loop hiring. And while it might not be a job you want forever, try to find any job because frankly, people think unemployment is this big boondoggle. The pay on unemployment, at least in Virginia, where I am, is so minimal. It can barely pay your bills, if that. It is so minimal. I mean, when COVID was here, it was a racket, unbelievably. You could be unemployed and make more money than working. But those days are gone. And so unemployment, if you're counting on that, it only lasts so long and you got to go through a bunch of hoops and it takes a long time even to get your unemployment benefits and your employer can dispute them. They can say you were fired for misconduct, in which case you're not going to get unemployment benefits. So if you do any of the things I talked about earlier of getting fired from your job, you're not getting unemployment. You're getting nothing because if you're fired for work for misconduct in most states, and certainly Virginia, but most states, you're not getting unemployment. So that's another reason to make sure you don't do any of those things. But look for, I know that sounds, you don't want to have to do it. Maybe if you feel worried, and embarrassed, which I hate that. I hate that anyone would feel embarrassed about any job, but I understand that people, have reached a certain level of professionalism in their work. And then to go do something like hourly work might feel different for them. But even construction, there are jobs open like that, including contractor jobs. So my point is to find something, go out and do something. Because if you're counting on unemployment, that's just not going to pay that much. Now, be sure to follow along with the Job Judge. We've got lots of episodes coming in 2025. Be sure to like, subscribe, and absolutely share this episode with anyone you care about so that there's no excuse to make sure that they understand not to engage in that behavior. Be sure to pick up my book, Stay Hired, for anyone entering the workplace so that they understand what all the rules are. And again, bring me in for training to your organization so that we can prevent some of these things from happening so that employees understand what the rules are. I thank you for listening to The Job Judge today. I'm Karen Michael, and you've been listening to The Job Judge.